Evidence-based practices. My first evidence-based practice will help a student who is in kindergarten, is struggling in English language arts. This child has no previous preschool and below average in many subjects. The student struggles to decode words to sound out and blend the words to make the sounds. My next student is all of my students in my class. They are in kindergarten, subject is math, and all students could benefit from this evidence-based practice because it is a more direct math instructions with help from their previous knowledge. My next students struggle with behavior. Again, they are in kindergarten, subject is behavior, and these are students who do not respond to negative reinforcement of rules and who might benefit from positive reinforcement strategies. The first evidence-based practice was foundational skills to support reading for understanding. 18 studies were conducted based on students decoding, writing, and analyzing word parts. 13 of these studies had positive outcomes in students reading in diverse groups of students. This student has trouble with combining sounds together to make the word, oftentimes forgoing the first letter and just saying the last sound of the word. This EBP I found gave information on how to help the students with this issue. It gave some ways of how to implement it. First, it gave the way of blending, reading left and right by combining each successive letter or combination of letter into one sound. There are two types of blending, chunking and sounding out. The first one is chunking. Students will combine the first two letters and practice that before adding the last chunk. On the right, it shows an example of how that would go in the classroom. Next is sounding out. Sounding out is saying the letter of each sound and then joining the sounds all together to form the word. On the left is an example of how that would work in the classroom. There are many activities to implement this. One was using high-frequency flashcards. That way the student can practice using smaller words that are more familiar. Next is decoding using Elkonian boxes. Elkonian boxes separate the words into sounds and they can build the words with the sounds. Lastly, it suggested to start with short, easy-to-decode sentences to build the skills before moving on to non-decodable words. Next was teaching math to young children. Children are more likely to gain math knowledge when they are frequently exposed to targeted, purposeful, meaningful math instruction. This evidence-based is centered around students using students' prior knowledge to help plan the lessons centered around the students' needs. How to implement this. Introductory activities, simple one-on-one group activities where the student can demonstrate to the teacher what they know. The teacher can formatively assess the students to develop their next lessons around what the students already knew. Next is observations, giving the students a problem and observing how the student solves it, showing their knowledge or their lack of the knowledge. Lastly, formal assessments, pre or post assessments that the teacher can use to develop and plan the lesson. Formal assessments can be many different types of assessments. How to implement the math. Adapting instruction can help with teachers planning to ensure they're not giving too low of a level or too high of a level tasks that would make the students frustrated either way. This will help all of my students because the teacher is formatively assessing, and that way they can plan the activity and then implement the activity in the correct way that would help the student target the math concept the teacher is trying to get them to learn. Lastly, the last one was reducing behavior problems in elementary school class. There is strong evidence that suggests that positive reinforcement is more beneficial to students. Decreasing student behavioral problem increases their academic performance. Students have trouble These students have trouble with reminders at recess or in class. Students don't respond to negative clip charts or consequences of their actions like putting their head down, is what my mentor has them do. How to implement. Have expectations set for the students. Before using any type of reinforcement, make sure the students are aware and capable of the expectations. These expectations should be set at the beginning of the year and constantly remind them throughout the year. That way, you know that they know. Next is teach skills by providing examples. Replacing negative behaviors with positive ones that would get the same result. One example this gave was getting the teacher's attention. Instead of acting out in a negative way, you can give them skills to get the teachers away in a positive way that would not get them in trouble. Last, number 3, giving positive reinforcers for appropriate behavior and withheld the reinforcers for negative behavior. Positive reinforcers should exceed negative ones. It promotes a positive student-teacher relationship, especially with the students who have bad behavior.